car sat dead in the middle of rush hour traffic, horns blaring, headlights glaring, drivers shouting. Inside, the man behind the wheel froze, gripping the steering wheel like it was a lifeline. Then, out of nowhere, a stranger stepped into the chaos, braced his hands on the bumper, and began to push. Who risks their own safety like that for someone they don't even know? And why did this moment leave the driver in tears? Hi, this is the empathy room. What this stranger discovers about the driver after he helps. Well, it's what reminds us that kindness can unlock the most unexpected truths. Subscribe and let us know where you're watching from, because this story connects us all. The stalled car belonged to Daniel, a man in his early 40s who had been carrying more weight than most people could imagine. His old sedan had coughed its last breath right in the middle of an intersection, leaving him stranded while angry drivers weaved around him. The key turned, but the engine gave nothing back, just a hollow click that mocked his effort. He leaned back against the seat, closing his eyes for a second, trying to gather strength that wasn't really there. His chest tightened, not just from the embarrassment of blocking traffic, but from something deeper, something eating at him long before this night. Cars kept stacking up, lights glaring, horns stretching into one long note of irritation. And yet, through all that noise, the man sat still, almost frozen, as if starting the car was the least of his problems. That's when movement caught his eye. Someone had stepped out from their vehicle. Not angry, not impatient, just walking directly toward him with calm determination. A stranger willing to step into danger where no one else would. The stranger planted his feet, leaned into the back of the sedan, and began to push. At first, nothing happened. The car resisted, heavy and stubborn, as if it didn't want to move. The man inside gripped the wheel tightly, glancing at the mirrors where headlights whipped by just inches away. The stranger bent lower, muscles straining under the effort, his breath sharp in the cold night air. Slowly, almost unwillingly, the car began to inch forward. Horns blared louder now, some out of anger, some out of warning, but the stranger didn't flinch. He pressed harder, boots scraping against the slick pavement, and the sedan rolled into motion. Drivers swerved, annoyed at the delay, yet a few eased up, watching in silence as one man forced the heavy machine across the intersection. The man behind the wheel felt his chest tighten, shame and relief tangled together. He couldn't bring himself to step out and help. Not yet. His hands shook as he steered, guided by the stranger's sheer determination. With every shove, the sedan edged closer to the shoulder, away from the relentless stream of traffic. By the time the car was clear, both men were breathing heavily. One from exertion, the other from something he couldn't yet put into words. When the sedan finally rolled into safety on the shoulder, the stranger stepped back, chest rising and falling, sweat mixed with the night air cooling on his brow. The driver fumbled with the door handle, his palms damp, before finally forcing himself out. The sounds of traffic still roared past, but here, in this small pocket of stillness, it felt like time slowed. He took a hesitant step toward the stranger, words caught in his throat. Gratitude was there, burning hot, but so was the weight of something deeper he had been carrying long before his car broke down. The stranger, hands resting on his hips, offered a small nod, not asking for thanks, not demanding recognition. "You all right?" he asked simply, his voice calm, as though he had just picked up a bag of groceries instead of dragging a 2-ton car across an active roadway. The driver's eyes welled unexpectedly, and he bit down hard, trying to keep composure. He managed to choke out, "Thank you, before his voice cracked. The stranger shifted his stance, watching him closely now, sensing there was more here than a stalled engine and a late-night inconvenience. That unspoken pause between them carried more weight than any traffic jam, and for the driver, the silence pressed harder than the honking horns ever had. The driver stood there, hands trembling as if he were holding something far heavier than car keys. His chest rose unevenly, breath shallow, and for a long moment, he couldn't meet the stranger's eyes. Then, as if the weight finally snapped the last thread of restraint, he spoke in a voice rough and unsteady. "I wasn't just stuck in traffic," he whispered, his throat tightening. "I was on my way to the hospital, my son. He's in the ICU." His voice cracked, raw and vulnerable. The words hung in the night air, cutting through the hum of engines and the distant wail of a siren somewhere far down the road. The stranger blinked, shoulders lowering, his expression softening instantly. The man continued, tears now breaking past his effort to hold them back. "He's only 7. They told me I needed to get there as fast as I could. And then this car, it just gave out on me." His knees seemed ready to buckle, the adrenaline from the scare mixing with the crushing fear of losing time he didn't have. The stranger stepped closer, steady but gentle, and put a firm hand on his shoulder. "You'll get there," he said with quiet conviction, his tone carrying the weight of someone who understood that sometimes hope itself was fuel. For the driver, that single touch, that grounded reassurance, broke the dam. His face crumpled, tears streaming, not just from fear but from the overwhelming relief that in his darkest, most helpless moment, someone had shown up. The stranger leaned closer, his voice steady above the noise of the street. "Your son's in the ICU?" The driver nodded quickly, pressing the heels of his palms against his eyes, as though trying to keep himself together. "Yes, I was rushing there. The car gave out and I thought..." He stopped, unable to finish, his throat tight. The stranger didn't press him, just glanced at the stalled car and then back at the man standing there, broken by circumstance yet still trying to hold himself upright. Without hesitation, the stranger said, "We're not wasting another second. Let's get this car off the road, and then I'll drive you there myself." The driver froze, stunned by the offer, because in that moment it wasn't just kindness being shown. It was someone taking his burden personally, carrying it as though it mattered just as much to them. The stranger guided him into the passenger seat of his own car and slid behind the wheel. The driver sat clutching his hands together, words failing him as the city lights streaked past. Every red light felt like a test, every passing second pressing against his chest. But for the first time since the breakdown, he wasn't panicking. The stranger kept his eyes on the road, steady and calm, as though he'd done this 100 times before. When they pulled up to the hospital entrance, the driver turned, his face wet with tears he could no longer hide. "I don't even know your name," he whispered. The stranger gave a faint smile, one hand resting on the wheel. "Names don't matter right now. Go be with your boy." The driver stumbled out, heart pounding, carrying with him not only the fear of what awaited inside, but also the unshakable memory of the night a stranger refused to let him face it all alone.